Everyone who's been to Florida's Emerald Coast knows the white sand beaches here are among the most beautiful in the entire world. The quaint and upscale resort and residential communities along scenic Highway 30A attract migratory tourists by the thousands. But locals know that just a few miles north of that translucent green gulf, Choctawhatchee Bay offers activities and a laid-back lifestyle that few tourists will ever experience or appreciate. Named after the Choctaw Nation that once thrived in this region, the term Choctawhatchee means River of the Choctaws, and the Muscogee Nation of Florida still embraces the Choctawhatchee riverbanks as their rightful home. Stretching 30 miles from end to end and spanning some 4 to 6 miles across at any given point, Choctawhatchee Bay is home to a teeming abundance of sea life, making it a fisherman's dream. Redfish, bluefish, speckled trout, flounder, shrimp, oysters, blue crab, striped mullet, white mullet. Choctawhatchee Bay's seafood menu is not only delicious, it's also extensive. But if you're not skilled or lucky enough to land your own fresh catch, don't worry. There are dozens of waterfront restaurants dotted all around the bay, eager to welcome you by boat, kayak, seaplane, or paddleboard. Or by car, if you must be so boring. Walton County local Trey Nick has been fishing these waters since he was a toddler, and his family's business, Nick's Seafood Restaurant, has been a bayfront cinder block institution since 1963.
My granddaddy settled here in the 50s, bought this place, which is a fish camp, back in 1956, and sold bait and rented boats, and it was a little fishing village, but you know, it's kind of the happening spot. And then he realized he liked to cook and serve seafood. Right here where we're at, I mean, in this, we have Basin Bayou to the north of us, and that's about an 800-acre lake, or bayou is what we like to call it. Bass and brim are prevalent, but they also do speckled trout and redfish. Choctawhatchee Bay is great oyster habitat here. We've lost that over the years. We don't know why we've lost that, but we're looking into those measures of bringing them back. But I can remember back when my granddaddy had the restaurant, we had oyster. He'd go out there and oyster, and we had oyster leases from the state, and we'd work these local beds and put that product right here in the restaurant. And that's where I want to get back to. I want to get back to harvesting the oysters that are in this bay and putting them right back on the table here in these local restaurants. Growing up here on the bay, I fished both. I fished, mostly it started as a hobby. And then it evolved into where when I realized you know what, I can make a living doing this. You know, because my granddaddy always told me, he said, learn to make your living from that Choctawhatchee Bay. That's your money right there. Learn to do that, and that's what I started doing. The mullet, we catch them locally here. We turn about 500 pounds a week through the restaurant. We take our mullet, we fillet it and skin it and debone it. So there's no bones, no skin on it, and it tastes different than it would if you fried it with the skin on or fried it with a bone in. That's what I like about a mullet. It can taste so many different ways, and it just depends on how you clean it. So, I've been on a crab boat since I was 6 years old. Doing it with my granddad. My granddad, we'd pull crab traps, and I like crabbing. I like getting on a boat and pulling crab traps, and it's just that salt water just gets in you, man. It's just an old commercial fisherman in me, I guess. So.
You'll find endangered Gulf sturgeon here too, although not usually on the end of your fishing line. These prehistoric creatures look like a bizarre fusion of carp and alligator, and they can grow up to 200 pounds. But toothy grins aside, these bottom feeders won't bite, although they have been known to leap out of the water unexpectedly and accidentally knocking the occasional fisherman into the drink. Throw in alligators, cow-nosed rays, pelicans, bull sharks, seagulls, bald eagles, osprey, the occasional manatee, and the ever crowd-pleasing dolphins, and, well, it's pretty easy to see why locals often leave the bustling touristy beach behind, opting instead for a more serene and satisfying life on the bay. On the far east end of the bay, you can explore Choctawhatchee River, which runs 140 miles northeast all the way up into Alabama. Or you can cut through the Intercoastal Canal, known as the Ditch to locals, which connects Choctawhatchee Bay to West Bay, Panama City, and beyond. Locals and visitors alike often speculate about the 2,000 wood pilings that jut up out of the water just east of the Highway 331 bridge. Some claim the pilings were remnants of the logging industry which once boomed here. Others say they had to do with oyster beds. But locals in the know will tell you that aluminum bowls once sat atop each post, where the seagulls and pelicans perch today. As it turns out, Eglin Air Force Base was behind these mysterious pilings, and those fabled metal dishes were omnidirectional radar corner reflectors, whatever that means. After that project was abandoned by the Air Force in the 1960s, a few enterprising locals collected and sold aluminum reflectors for scrap metal, an entrepreneurial move that was apparently frowned upon by the feds, at least according to the indictments. But that's a story for another time. The famous fishing communities of Destin and Fort Walton cap the west end of Choctawhatchee Bay, where the ironically named East Pass flows into the Gulf. In the early 1900s, the only pass from Choctawhatchee Bay out into the Gulf was about 1.5 miles east of where the current pass resides. But in the 1920s, a storm sealed off Old Pass Channel, as it was then known, and heavy rains repeatedly caused Choctawhatchee Bay to back up. Fed up with persistent flooding, 4 local fishermen famously took matters into their own hands and dug a trench in the hopes of allowing a little more water to escape into the sea. Much to their surprise, Choctawhatchee Bay exploded into the Gulf overnight, forming the pass that still defines Destin Harbor to this day. Of course, you really can't talk about Choctawhatchee Bay without talking about Crab Island, the famously beautiful sandbar along Destin Bridge. Crab Island was originally made from the sand that the Army Corps of Engineers dredged up from the East Pass. Over the decades, that transplanted sand has eroded to lie now just barely beneath the glistening water's surface, making it a unique and idyllic anchorage for boaters seeking a day of fun and sun. If you haven't quite found your sea legs yet, that's okay. There's still plenty of ways to access and enjoy Choctawhatchee Bay, including dozens of public parks along her shores, estuaries, and bayous. But my personal favorite way is to find a good old Bayside perch, one that serves up the fresh fruits of this ancient and beautiful body of water. Who says mullets went out of style? I like mine fried. This is life on the bay. And for me at least, it just doesn't get any better.